Today, we're talking about a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention: the mental health of new dads. While we often hear about postpartum depression in moms, many don't realize that fathers also struggle with mental health disorders. In fact, 1 in 10 new dads experience them, and then number climbs when moms are also affected. The symptoms aren't always obvious, and they can include anger, withdrawal, or substance abuse. So, joining us today is Dr. Dan Singley from Postpartum Support International, al- who has lived through this experience, and we'll talk about breaking down the stigma and spotting the signs and getting help. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Sigmund.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
So, can you share your personal story, what it was like to go through this as a dad?
So, for full disclosure, I don't have lived experience with postpartum depression. However, I am a dad. My kids are now 20 and 18. As a psychologist, my area of specialty generally is the psychology of men and men's issues, but my research is on paternal perinatal mental health or the dude to dad transition. And in that way, I've been able to work with nearly 1,000 dads over the years, and some of whom have really, really struggled with depression, with anxiety, with substance stuff, video gaming, relationship difficulties, and all the above. And what you said earlier about sometimes the way that depression plays out for men, that kind of agitated, angry, overusing substances, being isolated. That's very accurate. That a lot of fathers will manifest depression that way instead of like the stereotypical can't get out of bed, sort of weepy in the morning kind of thing. So people miss it.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. What are some, like, I mentioned some of them, and you mentioned also, but what are some of the signs that someone can sort of look out for themselves, or maybe other folks can look out that they might be affected by this?
So on the depression front, it's some dads manifest depressive symptoms that are exactly what you typically see in the DSM, right? Our diagnostic statistical manual. But like we were saying, looking for fathers, particularly right around the first 3 to 5 months postpartum, that's oftentimes when the symptoms for dads will spike, which is different. More commonly with moms, you're looking to do that differential diagnosis between just sort of typical first month baby blues right at 4 weeks, and then see is this major depressive disorder. But that doesn't really map onto dads. So there's the time frame of it to look at, but also the way that it plays out for a lot of dads is it looks like anger and irritation. It looks like social isolation, which doesn't mean you're not around people, right? You can be around people at work. You can live in a multi generational household. You can be a member of a faith based community, whatever it is. And so you're around people, but he's just not really engaging or connecting. And as I said, I talked about increase in different kinds of. It's not just substance use. It really kind of any dopaminergic activity that gets the cerebral joy juice going. So it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could also be video gaming, risky sex, gambling, shoplifting for that matter. And then finally, there's what we call somaticizing. And this is an interesting one. Somaticizing just means taking a psychological experience and turning into a physiological one. And this kind of aligns with a lot of times this the shame and the stigma that fathers will experience at having depression or having anxiety at a time when we're all taught you're supposed to be happy and rainbows and unicorns. And really, nobody says, like, hey, 1 in 10 dads gets postpartum depression. 1 in 2 dads gets postpartum depression when his partner has it. And that somaticizing or I can't be depressed. I'm a dude, I'm a dad. However, I can have migraines. I can have chest tightness. I can feel like there's a weight on me or something. Those are other key ways to look for depression. On the anxiety side, a lot of times it's hypervigilance, meaning I'm like super focused on one aspect, like the bottles aren't clean enough, or the schedule has to be exactly right, along with avoidance or potentially or just avoidance. Like if I have a lot of anxiety about my baby, I will find every reason in the book to avoid it or my partner or whatever the trigger is.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned the statistic that 1 in 10 men are affected by this, and if the mother is also affected by this, it goes up to the 1 in 2. Why is that? Is it? I'm assuming just because two folks are dealing with this in a household, it just escalates, or
Yeah, this is a great question. So I do quite a lot of training. I work with Postpartum Support International. And I get this question a lot. And sort of the way that I'll frame it is, yeah, typically the ones who get screened, right? The ones that most likely are going to get screened are the moms. And it's the 50% of the time when moms are depressed, so are their partners. And most of the research is on het couples. And so it's the mom gets assessed, the mom's depressed, and then half of the time, which is a massive public mental health number, so do the dads in those kinds of couples. And sometimes what I get is, aren't you just blaming the moms for the dads having difficulty? Absolutely not. Really, this research finding, and it's a pretty robust one in the literature that we see over and over again, to me is more of a testament to how central that co-parental relationship is between the parents. So that if one of them is struggling, then it naturally translates to the other one struggling through that connection and through the relationship. The good news is it goes the other way. Like the rising tide will float all boats. When one person starts to have their depression remit or feel better, it'll oftentimes bring the other one along with them too. And it's interesting. Like that's one of the ways that I'll talk with dads about that are kind of in denial about, I'm not depressed, but they have all the symptoms that we just talked about. And it's like, look, dude, you can do this for yourself. And that will bring along, like, this is not just for you. This is for your whole family systems. And a lot of times it's getting into that protect, provide role and framing it that way and letting the dad know that really one of the most important things that he can provide is the healthiest version of himself. And there's tons of research to support that point.
Yeah. Now, like let's say if you look through social media, you see a lot of these memes, like like if you're a man, if you got a problem, well, deal with it. That's it. No one really cares. That's a meme I see a lot at least on my timeline.
Sure.
Why do you think we don't hear much about this for men? Parental mental health disorders and that. Why do you think this is not such a topic that's even talked about, even when we're having a baby and going to the doctor's office for the wellness visits and things like that. I don't remember even hearing about this.
It's definitely multifaceted. One key aspect that I think underscores the why here is, generally speaking, this area of mental health is called maternal mental health. Whereas really it's most properly parental mental health. And within that, there are some areas that are exclusively maternal, others that are exclusively paternal. But generally speaking, when we're talking about the transition to parenthood, it really is parental mental health. But words matter, right? And so if we think of this in terms of simply a mom's issue, like a good friend of mine once made the observation that if you don't think something exists, you won't even look for it. And so there's the terminology, but there's also the sort of kind of cultural sense of what it means to be a man. And, you ask your average guy, "Hey, what does it mean to be a father?" And it's you protect, you provide, you sacrifice. And agreed, like these are noble aspects of being a person, of being a man, of being a father. The tricky part is hardly anyone tells these fathers that, yes, protecting and providing and sacrificing for the ones that you love is very important and necessary in a lot of circumstances. However, there are going to be other times when you, dad, are going to need to allow others to protect you, to provide for you, and to sacrifice for you. But that's a major violation of the orthodox bro code, right? We don't necessarily think about that. And then when you do the fatherhood thing, it's that aspect of being a man really gets ramped up. And it's guys struggle with stigma about mental health, shame. Like, I don't give myself permission to feel down because it's my wife who's staying up all night, is exhausted, or, nipples are cracked. And what am I doing? Like, I don't get to have self care or go, talk to somebody about what I'm struggling with. These are some of the key factors, I think.
Yeah. So what happens when you yourself may be noticing these symptoms, or other ones may be noticing symptoms in you and looking to maybe tell you, hey, you may need help? Because I from what I experienced and what other folks have taught me, that sometimes men can get defensive. Like you mentioned, like, like, hey, you need some help. Like, "Yeah, I don't need help. I'm not, nothing's wrong with me." It's hard to sort of break through that and make a person realize that they do need help.
It is. It's absolutely right. It's funny. I was just laughing because the literature on men's and fathers help seeking, in particular mental health help seeking, is that we just don't do it. It's the only I don't even ask for directions, let alone help, which is funny Because a lot of times the way that we teach boys and men about being a man is you have a team, right? Like we're socialized to look at transactional relationships and to be parts of teams. However, when it comes to this sort of thing, the shame typically causes us to self isolate. And so when somebody comes and is, bro, you kind of seem off or down or whatever, the tendency is, the platitudes. It's all good. It is what it is. I'm letting it roll off my back, like this kind of stuff. And sometimes it can be really helpful to hear it not from their partner, but from another dad or from another dude who can normalize, yeah, man, sometimes you're rocking it and you do great over here. Other times there's a part of our lives where you can be really struggling and having difficulty. And that's one of the reasons why. So I work with Postpartum Support International, and we are the largest provider of reproductive and perinatal mental health services. We connect people, fathers, moms, parents of all genders with the resources that can be the most helpful to them. We have a helpline that you can call into, you can text into it. It's English and it's Spanish. Every Friday, we've got dudes and dads only groups where they can come together and talk with other dads that are experiencing a lot of the same. And you can dial into those and just lurk. You can just be off camera, you're there, and you kind of listen and see what's what. And oftentimes, dialing in that first time, it seems like a mountain too tall. Like, I don't need that. I'm too busy. I don't, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of times, when we're able to clarify, and the dad gets it, like stuffing it and trying to push through is going to result in you hitting the wall at some point. And it's usually not pretty when it happens. So if you really want to show up for your family, you have to start factoring in that you are one of the most important things that you provide them during this really critical time.
Yeah, then yeah, the Postpartum Support International. Can you go a little bit more into what other resources are available, and give out the website, give out the hotline number if you can.
Definitely. The website is postpartum.net. And on it, we have a ton of resources, including a dedicated fatherhood spot with different resources, with handouts, with information about how you can access. The call in number for the helpline is 1-800 944 4773. And again, the website is postpartum.net. And there, well, the way the helpline typically works is when you text or you call, that's sort of the main number. And then what they do is connect callers with local people in your area. So PSI is very much a grassroots organization. And most of the people who are local coordinators and who work have lived experience. They themselves have had depression, anxiety, relationship problems, psychosis, substance issues at the same time. And now they want to give back. And so calling in, texting in, and saying, hey, I want some resources, you'll get kind of general information about paternal, perinatal, and reproductive mental health. But then they're also going to connect you with someone in your community. We have an outreach coordinator in every single county in the country.
Wow,
Yeah.
great that the resources are there. So you're a dad listening to this. Some dad out there now is listening to this right now who might be struggling, but is afraid to ask for help. What would you say to him?
I would say to him, it's not just you, man. You are not alone in this, and it isn't your fault. This isn't some weakness on your part. This is a big point of transition, and most of us have some level of stress or distress in really big transitions, like becoming a parent. And there are really well validated, well researched therapy approaches that have been shown to be effective for you, this dad. It's not just about I'm gonna go to therapy and emotionally vomit once a week. You can do that, but typically we focus on evidence-based practices where you're working with somebody who gives you tools and resources that you go off and practice, conversations to have, insights to lean into, different kinds of relational hygiene tactics. And Postpartum Support International has an online directory, and you can go online and search in your area for somebody who focuses on dad's issues. Like search parameters are you could be like dads, I would like a male, I'd like a female, I want this insurance. And the people that are listed on the PSI online directory, that's not just pay to play. Like, we review everybody. They need to have demonstrated reproductive and perinatal expertise. So that's another really good resource to know about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dr. Singley, before we go, is there anything else I have not touched on? Do you want our listeners to know about?
Yeah, yeah. Father's Day is coming up. And the day after Father's Day, the Monday after Father's Day, we've established as International Father's Mental Health Day, that postpartum support got going. And it's a way to just draw attention that fathers do sometimes struggle, that they do have mental health needs. And for those of you that know a dad who seems like he might be struggling or seems kind of distant or edgy or angry, this is not real complicated psychology here. But ask him, "Hey dad, how are you doing?" And then wait for the platitude. Wait for the "it's all good," like whatever it is. And then once he's done with that, ask him, "Hey dad, how are you really doing?" And then just listen.
Wise words there. Thank you so much. We're talking to Dr. Dan Singley from Postpartum Support International about mental health for new dads. Thank you so much for talking to us and do really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.